Your sister's housewarming party was so lovely, my mom said, smiling over her plate. Then she looked straight at me and asked, so, when are you going to catch up? Something cracked in that quiet restaurant. Years of being compared pressed into my chest all at once. My sister stopped mid-sip. My stepfather finally glanced up from his phone. Even the waiter hesitated nearby. I didn't feel angry. I felt clear. I set my fork down, met my mother's eyes, and answered her calmly, no excuses, no explanations. What I said next wasn't loud, it wasn't cruel, but it changed the way my family looked at me forever. My name is Diana, I'm 33 now, and for most of my life, I was the daughter who needed more time to catch up, more time to figure things out, more time to become someone worth bragging about. On paper, my family looked fine, a comfortable house, holiday dinners that made it onto social media, a mother who loved to talk about family values, but inside those walls, there was always a quiet hierarchy, and I learned my place early. My sister Jessica was 2 years older and effortlessly impressive, good grades without trying, friends everywhere, teachers adored her. My mom talked about her like she was proof of something she'd done right. I was the quieter one, the kid who read in her room, the one whose achievements were mentioned quickly, if at all. After my parents split, my mom remarried. Dave moved in with his easy opinions and his talent for staying neutral, which really meant staying silent. He never caused the favoritism, but he never stopped it either. At dinner, Jessica's stories got space, mine got nods. I worked my way through school on my own, took jobs I didn't love so I could afford the life I wanted later. I didn't announce my plans. I'd learned that if you spoke too soon, someone would decide you weren't there yet. By the time I met David, I was already tired of proving myself. He was calm in a way that felt unfamiliar. He listened without correcting me. He never asked when I'd get there, because to him, I already had. We built a life that made sense to us, a home that felt warm instead of impressive. Quiet mornings, dinners without commentary. When we bought our house, it wasn't big, it had character, light through the windows in the afternoon, a kitchen that smelled like coffee and fresh bread. On weekends, we hosted a housewarming with friends who actually showed up for us, people who knew my name without needing context. I didn't invite my family, not to punish them, not to make a point. I just wanted one thing in my life that didn't feel like an audition. Of course, they noticed eventually, and when they did, the questions started, soft at first, curious, then sharper, because in my family, success was only real if everyone could see it, and I was about to learn how uncomfortable people get when you stop asking for permission. At first, the questions came disguised as curiosity. So, where exactly did you end up buying? My mom asked one afternoon, her tone light, almost playful. Oh, that area, she added quickly, like she was filling in a blank I hadn't asked for. I kept my answers short. The city. A quiet neighborhood, nothing fancy. The more neutral I stayed, the more uncomfortable she seemed. Jessica took a different approach. She texted late at night asking for photos, asking about the kitchen, the yard, whether we planned to renovate. Every question felt like a measuring tape, stretched out just long enough to see where I landed compared to her. A few weeks later, the real reason surfaced. We ran into Mike at a grocery store near our place. He looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with a long day, his shoulders sagged, his smile arrived late. When he mentioned their house, his voice dropped. It's a lot, he said carefully, payments, bills. Things add up faster than you think. I didn't push, I didn't need to. The silence between his words told me everything. After that, my mom's calls changed. She stopped asking about my house and started talking about stress, about how hard it was for Jessica, about how family should show up when things get tough. Then she said it, you're doing well now, better than we expected. Honestly, maybe you could help out a little, just until things stabilize. Help out meant money, not advice, not support, money. I stared at the paperwork on my desk after that call, numbers I'd earned slowly and carefully. I thought about the years I worked without help, the way no one had stepped in when I was barely scraping by, the way success suddenly made me useful. When I said no, the air shifted. My mom didn't argue at first. She sounded hurt, disappointed, as if I'd failed some invisible test. Dave sent a message about responsibility. Jessica went quiet, then resurfaced with a single line, I didn't think you'd be like this. That's when the invitations stopped. No more casual dinners, no birthdays, no updates, unless they came with guilt attached. I was outside the circle again, only this time, it wasn't because I hadn't done enough, it was because I wouldn't fix what I hadn't broken. One night sitting on the couch with David, I finally said it out loud, I think they only want me around when I'm useful. He didn't rush to comfort me, he just nodded, then he said gently, the question is, how much access are you willing to give people who don't actually see you? I didn't answer right away, but something had already changed. For the first time, I wasn't wondering how to earn my place. I was wondering what would happen if I stopped trying altogether. The silence from my family didn't explode all at once. It thinned out first, texts stopped coming, group chats went quiet. I'd see photos later posted by someone else, proof that dinners and birthdays were still happening, just not with me. When my mom finally called, it wasn't to apologize, it was to explain. "You took things too personally," she said, like she was talking about a misunderstanding over dessert. "Jessica is under a lot of pressure, you could have been more supportive." Supportive, the word sat between us like a trap. I asked her what supportive looked like when I was working 2 jobs and studying late into the night, when I bought my first car on my own, when I built my career quietly without help. She changed the subject. Dave texted next, a long message about family sticking together, about how money comes and goes, but relationships last. He didn't mention how quickly relationships seemed to disappear when money was off the table. Jessica called a few days later. Her voice was sharp at first, then brittle. She talked about stress, about expectations, about how embarrassed she felt. Then she said it, "I just thought you'd understand, you always do." That was the moment it collapsed for me, not loudly, not dramatically, just a clean break inside my chest. I realized they weren't asking me to help because they respected me, they were asking because I was convenient, because I'd learned how to survive without making noise, because I was supposed to absorb discomfort so others wouldn't have to. I hung up and sat in my home office staring at the window. Outside, the city hummed the way it always did, nothing had changed except me. That night, I told David everything I hadn't said out loud before, how tired I was, how small I felt around them, how every interaction left me replaying conversations, wondering what I should have said differently. He listened, then asked a simple question: "What do you want your life to feel like?" Peace came to mind immediately, not approval, not praise, peace. So, I stopped explaining myself, I stopped justifying my choices. When messages came that hinted at guilt, I answered politely and briefly. When invitations didn't come, I didn't ask why. I filled my calendar with people who showed up without conditions. It wasn't revenge, it wasn't a plan, it was a boundary, and boundaries, I learned, don't announce themselves, they just change what you're willing to tolerate. A few weeks later, my mom called with an invitation, Jessica's birthday dinner, a nice place, just family. I said yes, before I could overthink it, not because I was ready to be welcomed back, but because I needed to see what would happen when I no longer played my old role. The restaurant was exactly the kind of place my mom liked to choose when she wanted something to feel important: low lighting, white tablecloths, glassware polished to the point it reflected your face back at you, whether you wanted to see it or not. Jessica was already there when David and I arrived. She looked flawless in the way that takes effort: perfect hair, perfect makeup, the kind of perfection that felt tight, like it might crack if she relaxed for even a second. Mom hugged her first, Dave followed. I waited my turn, standing there with a polite smile that didn't reach my eyes. Dinner started the way these things always did: small talk, updates that weren't really updates. Jessica talked about work, Mom filled in details Jessica didn't mention. Dave nodded at the right moments. No one asked how I was doing. I watched my mother cut into her food, taking her time, savoring the moment. Then she smiled the same smile she'd worn 1,000 times before. "Your sister's housewarming party was so lovely," she said, like she was sharing a fond memory. "Everyone's still talking about it." Jessica glanced up, pleased. Dave murmured something approving. Then my mom turned to me, tilting her head lightly. "When are you going to catch up?" The words landed clean and sharp, no anger, no accusation, just an assumption so deeply rooted she didn't even hear it as an insult. For a second, everything slowed down. I noticed the hum of conversation from other tables, the clink of glasses. The weight of the fork in my hand. I thought about the years I'd swallowed comments like this, the times I'd laughed them off, the nights I'd gone home and replayed them in my head, wondering what was wrong with me. I set my fork down. I didn't rush. I didn't smile. "I hosted mine last year," I said calmly. The table stilled, but no one spoke yet. My mom blinked clearly, processing. "Yours?" she asked. "What do you mean?" I met her eyes. "My housewarming. David and I had it last year." Jessica frowned. "You did?" "Yes," I said. "It was a really nice night." My mom's confusion turned into something else. Hurt maybe, or disbelief. "Why wouldn't you tell us?" I took a breath. Slow, steady. "You just weren't on the guest list." Her fork froze halfway to her mouth. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lean forward. I didn't soften it either. Around the table, reactions rippled. Jessica stopped mid-sip, her glass hovering in the air. Dave finally looked up, eyes wide. The space between us filled with silence so thick it felt deliberate. "What do you mean we weren't invited?" my mom asked, her voice tight. "I mean exactly what I said," I replied. "We hosted a housewarming. We invited people who show up for us." Jessica shifted in her chair. "Diana, maybe we should." "No," I said gently without looking at her. "I need to finish." I turned back to my mom. "For 30 years, I continued. You've made it clear that my life only matters when it looks like Jessica's. When I struggled, it was part of the process. When I succeeded quietly, it didn't count. And when I finally built something that made me happy, you didn't ask how it felt. You asked why you weren't invited." My mom's eyes filled with tears. "I love you," she said. "You're my daughter." "I know you think you do," I said. "But love isn't just pride when something looks good from the outside. It's showing up when it doesn't." Dave cleared his throat. "This feels unfair," he said. "Family makes allowances for each other. I've made allowances my entire life." I replied, "What I stopped doing was sacrificing myself to keep things comfortable." Jessica looked down at her plate. When she spoke, her voice was quiet. "I didn't realize you felt this way." I believed her. "That didn't change anything." "I'm not blaming you," I said. "We were kids. You took the love that was offered. I would have, too. But we're adults now, and I'm done pretending this dynamic is healthy." My mom shook her head. "You could have told us." "I did," I said, "just not with words. I told you by building a life that doesn't revolve around your approval." The silence stretched. Somewhere nearby, someone laughed. Life moved on around us. I stood reaching for my wallet. "I'm not angry," I said, laying cash on the table. "I'm just done apologizing for who I am." I turned to Jessica. "Happy birthday. I really do hope you find what you're looking for." Then I walked away. I didn't look back to see if my mom was crying or if Dave was speaking or if Jessica had finally lifted her glass. I already knew what I'd see. A family shocked not by my words, but by the fact that I finally meant them. The fallout didn't come all at once. It arrived in pieces. A few days passed with no calls, no messages. The silence felt different this time. Not sharp, not punishing, just empty. And for the first time, that emptiness didn't scare me. Jessica was the first to surface. Not to argue, not to accuse, just a short message saying she needed space. I gave it to her. I'd learned that distance can be a kind of mercy. Over the next few months, things shifted in quiet ways. Jessica downsized. The big house disappeared from her life, replaced by something smaller and more manageable. Her social posts changed, too. Fewer polished moments, more ordinary ones, books, walks, a dog she adopted that seemed endlessly grateful just to be there. My mom tried to reach out once, a careful message, no apology, just an opening. I didn't rush to fill it. David and I went back to our routines. Morning coffee in the kitchen, evenings that ended without tension. Friends who laughed easily and stayed too long. Our home felt lighter, like it had been waiting for me to stop dragging old weight through the door. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel guilty either. What I felt was steady. Sometimes I still think about that night at the restaurant, about the fork suspended in midair, about the silence that followed. That silence didn't break my family. It showed me exactly where I stood when I finally chose myself. For a long time, I thought love meant trying harder, being quieter, proving I deserved a seat at the table. I was wrong. Love doesn't ask you to disappear so others can feel comfortable. And success doesn't need an audience to be real. If this story felt familiar, if you've ever been compared, overlooked, or made to feel like you were always behind, you're not alone. You're not late. You're not lacking. You're just done running someone else's race. If this resonated with you, share your story in the comments and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next.